Welcome to top 10 teachings of Daf 31 of Brachos. The first teaching is a wedding. What was the first wedding that they broke the glass on? We know that under the chuppah, there's a special moment which starts off solemnly and then often explodes after the chassan puts his foot down with Mazel Tov, and many people sing the song Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim, if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. There's actually a famous joke that many rabbis say, and it never gets old. After the chassan puts his foot down on the glass, they say that's the last time he's going to put his foot down. There's actually a story that I heard in our yeshiva. Rabbi Marmerstein told the following story, that there was a young man during the outbreak of World War II who unfortunately at his wedding, the Nazis came into the wedding and they killed his bride at the wedding. And he was so distraught, he never really fully recovered. And then many years later, he made it to America. I think it was in Lakewood, I believe, where Rabbi Marmerstein was living at that time. He would hang out in the yeshiva, this kind of broken man who was very bright. And he said, I could undo all marriages. You know, sometimes a person doesn't want to give a get. Now, again, I'm not saying, this is more of a joke than halacha. He said, how could I undo all marriages? There's a law that if somebody breaks things, he's a shota. He's like mentally incompetent, and you could undo his wedding. And since every chassan breaks something under the chuppah, you could automatically invalidate everyone's wedding. That was a little story. Obviously, we don't really do that in real life. But anyway, let's take a look at the Gemara on Daf Lamed Aleph, the end of Daf Lamed 30 at the end and 31 in the beginning. The Gemara says the following. The Gemara says, I'm going to show you the Gemara inside. The Gemara says, there was Mar, the son of Ravina, who was making a wedding party for his son. He saw that the rabbis were exceedingly joyful, laughing, happy, too happy. Question is, what's wrong with that? But let's just assume right now there's something about losing a sense of perspective about the seriousness of life. When you get too happy, you could become frivolous, and then you can kind of lose control of what's right and wrong, and that might be a problem. So what did he do? He took a very expensive cup worth 400 zuz, so it's like $1,000, $2,000 cup, let's say. V'tavar kamayu ve'yatzvu. He broke it in their presence, and they, became serious. Says Tosfos, and Ravashi has the same story. He had a wedding party, and he saw the rabbis were getting too happy. He took a white cup, also presumably very expensive, and he broke it before them, and they became very serious. Tosfos says, the top over here, Mikan nagu l'shabes chuchis b'nesuin. From these stories, or this story, we know that there is a custom that we still have till today to break the glass by the chuppah, by the nesuin. So that is the story of the first time that they broke a glass at a wedding, and it was more spontaneous. It was because it was trying to refocus the rabbis from their almost frivolousness, so to speak. And the question is, why do we do that at a wedding? Is that like automatically understood that we're going to become too lightheaded, too unserious, that we need to break the glass? And perhaps we can say the following. A wedding on the one hand, is a very joyous occasion. On the other hand, there's something very serious and solemn about the wedding. A wedding is like Yom Kippur. A person, a chas and a kala, they fast on their wedding because in their union, there's something so serious that to be able for it to succeed, it's almost as if it's a unhuman. There's like a beyond nature quality to getting married that requires one to do tshuva, to what type of tshuva is it? It's not simply a tshuva for one's sin. Rather, it's a change of the possibility of who one is to become something more, to be able to be married to this other person. I just want to tie that in. Today, tonight, and tomorrow, we celebrate Lag BaOmer. We're going to be doing a wonderful program tomorrow night that you got to sign up for. Lag BaOmer, unbelievable. Lag BaOmer is we celebrate the Zohar and so on and so forth. It's a very special time. What do we call the day of Lag BaOmer? We call it Hilula de Rashbi. We call it the marriage of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's so cute because when you talk to kids and even some adults, they say, what's so special about Lag BaOmer? It's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's wedding day. On a simplistic level, it's totally wrong. It's actually the day of his death. He called the day of his death so spiritually important that it was his wedding day because it was his day of union with the Holy One, blessed be He. And in the Idra Zuta, it's one of the most exquisite Jewish teachings on the sanctity of dying. And it's beautiful. And nowadays we only live in fear of dying, and we have to a little bit not just live in fear of dying. Of course, we have to fear dying on a simplistic level, but on a deeper level, we also have to be able to learn how to die as a wedding, as a unification, as a culmination of our purpose in this world. With that, we can now understand this Gemara better. There's a connection between getting married and giving. It's a death. It's a small death. What's your death? Your past life is dead, and now you have a new life. Your new life somehow cuts off certain possibilities. That's why it's a very serious day. It's a serious day because it's a huge responsibility that one takes on, and to be able to continue that one-time act on a daily basis is Herculean efforts to be able to do it. Therefore, in the wedding is both an affirmation of the joy that a wedding represents and the solemnness of the occasion. There's such a serious element for a union to succeed. So in that, perhaps we can explain why today we do something very strange, and many of the rabbis say it's wrong to do this. We shout Mazel Tov after the breaking of the glass. The breaking of the glass is the opposite. It's not about being happy, it's about being sad. And that's why many people recite the remembrance of remembering Jerusalem. It either is 2 for 1, that we're combining the sadness with the knowledge that we don't have Jerusalem. Actually, we do to some extent, but we don't have it fully. We don't have it, so to speak, in the way it was with the Beit HaMikdash. But on the other hand, it represents this idea of seriousness. Now, to me, the core of this daf and every daf in Gemara, something that's very important, this Nikuda, listen to me very carefully. There's a big conversation today amongst the scholarly world in the Talmudic, in the modern Orthodox, in the conservative Reform, non-affiliated, not Jewish scholarship of Talmud. Who's constructing the dialogue of the Talmud where we don't find a rabbi said this, a rabbi said that, when there's an unknown author, so to speak, or maybe he is known, maybe it's Ravina and Ravashi, the last. We usually refer to them as the compilers of the Talmud Bavli. But this is a big conversation. I would like to suggest that there is an element of Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration in the puzzle of the pieces of the Talmud as they're put together. Because the big question is not so much who put them together. Was it the to some extent in the period of the Amoraim or the Savaroim or Stamoim as they're called, but rather what inspired them to put it into these categorizations. Now, we all know about encyclopedias, which the Talmud is not. We know there's some level of order because of the tractates, but what really needs to be given more in-depth study is the stitching together always has a, if not implicit connection to the things that come before it and after it and around it, but even more than that, there's always an internal connection that most people are not aware of, even great Torah scholars, definitely not academics. So that's a proposal I'd like to be able to not just do today, but every once in a while, maybe every day, or every time we do this class, to try to explain this idea to show you what I'm talking about. So, what were we talking about? What was the Talmud talking about before this? And what is it going to be talking about after this? It's talking about the seriousness that one has to enter when one goes into prayer. We also know that a union between a husband and wife is similar to a union between the Holy One, blessed be He, and the people of Israel, who are praying to God, so to speak. We also know that when we feel our prayers are being answered, there's a tendency to be joyful. And if we think that our prayers are already successful and we're already in the state of union, so to speak, so then why do we need to be serious? And the answer to that is because the union, the physical union between a husband and wife, has not been completed on a mystical level as long as we are in exile. So that's already just a simplistic, not simplistic, but simple answer as to kind of why this story is right here in terms of only praying mitoch koved rosh, the seriousness that we put in the story about getting married. Okay, that's number one. That leads us to number two, which is not laughing until Moshiach is here. Thank God I am a chassid. Unfortunately, some people, when they grow up with a certain heaviness. Why? Because of Gemaras like this. What does the Gemara say? It's not the fault of the Gemara. It's the fault of the systems that take this Gemara too seriously. There are other Gemaras that counterbalance it in the same page. But let me quote a story. I once hosted in my home Rabbi Gedalia Fleer, my home when I lived in Santa Cruz many years ago. He was one of the first rabbis that visited me, that did a Shabbos with me, and he told me the following story. He didn't share this with the chaver who came for Shabbos, a beautiful Shabbos, but he shared this with me personally. He said when he was learning in Nevardak, the American branch of Nevardak, which is probably somehow related through marriage to some of those people, but it's an amazing yeshiva. It's a yeshiva that believes in Musar. So when he was young, he was laughing, and one of the Rosh Yeshivas called him over, and gave him a stern look, and said, "Oz yimale schok pino." Then, meaning when the Mashiach will come, our mouths will be filled with laughter, which instantly shut him down. Meaning that even as this 17-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid laughing was inappropriate, even if it was about a joke or something that wasn't wrong per se. So that is based on our Gemara. Now, obviously, as a chassid, that's troublesome. And perhaps that was one of the divisions between early Hasidim and early Misagdim, was how to understand a Gemara like this. So let's take a look at the Gemara. The Gemara says the following thing. I'm going to show you the Gemara inside. Number 2, the Gemara says, what are the chances? I didn't plan this out, but we're learning the Torah of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So this is amazing. I feel like goosebumps just reading this. Aser la'adam sheyamale schoik piv ba'olam hazeh it's forbidden for a person to fill their mouth with joy or laughter in this world. Shenemar oz yamalas chokpina, because the verse says, then, when Yimosa Moshiach, a person's mouth will be full of laughter or joy. L'shonein arena, in our mouths with song. When are we going to do this? When the non-Jews say, wow, God has been so great to them. They said about the sage, when he heard this teaching from Rabbi Yochanan, who was again quoting Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rosh Lakish, when he heard that, never became full of like laughter and joy. He always had some level of self-control. There's a certain level of stoicism here that would mean that you're always in self-control. Okay, so very interesting. As a chassid, what do I do with this Gemara? It's troubling Gemara. I will just say that there's a context which is totally so important and I have to say that when it comes to learning Gemara, Hasidim are often a little bit behind Mishnagdim. But when it comes to understanding the psychology in the Gemara as it applies today, the Hasidim are more advanced than the Misnagdim. Again, I'm speaking in very general terms. There are some Hasidim that could outlearn any Misnagid just about, and there's some Misnagdim who are more advanced psychologically in their understanding of the Gemara than almost any Chassid. But if I can speak in generalities, if I can give these broad-ranging cockamamie generalizations, which are not true in 45% of the time, but they're true 65, what is it, 45? 55. 55% of the time they are true. Because again, you have emotionally crippled Hasidim and you have emotionally advanced Misnagdim, don't get me wrong. But by and large, 55 to 65, when it comes to the emotional maturity, so to speak, that a person puts into the Gemara, I see the advantage of Hasidim. When it comes to the pure intellectuality and the dedication to studying Talmud, I see by and large, again, 55-45, the Misnagdim have the advantage. Now, somebody's going to ask me, Rabbi Citron, I don't even know if I want to call you a rabbi. You're creating a machlokus. I have friends who every time I make fun of a misnagid, they fly into a fit. They make fun of the people they don't like, but they don't like fun. They don't make like now. Why am I doing this? A, I can't help myself. That's my yitzhar. B, it's because in case you find somebody who you love learning with, halacha, something, but you find that their certain understanding of the psychology of human nature is not resonating with you, you should realize that person doesn't represent all of Gemara, all of Ashkafa, all of our ways of understanding Torah. There are other teachers, and you can mix and match. That's the beauty of Torah. That's what I love about Torah. I can't say I have one teacher because every teacher that I have gives me something unique. And if I had one perfect teacher that had every single quality in them and needed nothing else, it would be almost like too good to be true, but it also wouldn't give a chance for me to have a number of teachers. So I, Baruch Hashem, am able to look for, in certain areas, certain rabbis that will fill in what I need in one area, and other rabbis who will fill in what I need in the other area. So that's why I'm telling you, not to make a machlokus, but for you to know that there's ways that you can get what you need within Judaism, even if you went to one shul or one rabbi or one shir and you liked something and you didn't like the other thing, you could continue to go to that rabbi shir. and just find another rabbi that supplements the area of the weakness that you didn't resonate with, that way you'll get everything you need. And that's why I'm telling you this thing. That's Torah number 2. Now, Torah number 3 is, the Gemara says, it gives us 3 examples of what is a straightforward law. And tells us that laws like these, one can and should learn before davening. What's the context of the Gemara? The Gemara is talking about the mindset that a person should have when they are going to begin their prayer. The Gemara had already said in the Mishnah, Ein omdim lehispel el mitel koved rosh. A person should only begin to pray out of seriousness. But there's another thing. You could be learning Torah, but the learning itself, especially if it's an in-depth learning, gets your mind to think to such an extent where you can't stop thinking about the Gemara or the halacha. Now, you would say that's a good thing, and generally it is a good thing. But there are times when you want to be able to stop thinking about the Gemara and be able to go into your prayer. So in order to be able to do that, you need to be able to study something which is clear cut. It's called halacha pesuka, okay? And the Gemara gives 3 examples of what halacha pesuka is, and what I'm going to suggest about the first 2 is that they're not clear cut, because almost nothing is really clear cut. You can always ask and analyze and find. The Gemara wants to say these things, there's nothing to discuss. It's so straightforward. There's no way you can get lost in questioning and answering and wondering. And I'm going to suggest that the Gemara picked these things on purpose. There's so many other halacha that are equally easy or maybe even easier. And there's, again, a reason that connects this part of the Gemara with other parts of the Gemara, because it's al-pi Ruach HaKodesh. The Seder of the Gemara is al-pi Ruach HaKodesh. What is, and when I say al-pi Ruach HaKodesh, what I mean to say is there's always a connection. Sometimes the hidden connection is so strong that you don't see it, but once you see it, you're like, that's Ruach HaKodesh. Like you're like, that's deep. So what are the 2 cases of halacha psuka? So they're very interesting cases. I'll read it to you in the Gemara inside, so you can learn a little bit inside. Number 3. So the Gemara says, Taner Abanan ein omdim lehispala. We don't begin to pray. We don't stand up to pray literally. Lo mitoch din, not from adjudicating a court case, v'lo mitoch dvar halacha, and not even from learning a halachic matter, ela mitoch halacha psuka, only from a straightforward halacha. V'hechi dami halacha psuka. What is an example of that? Amar Abaya, ki ha de Rab Zera, Amar Rab Zera, like a teaching that was quoted by a sage named Rab Zera, Benos Yisrael hachmira al atzman, she'afilu rose tipos dam kechardel yosheves aleha shiva nikiyim. The Jewish women made a stringency upon themselves that even if they have a little bit of a drop of blood, like a size of a mustard seed, it's not so important really the size of the blood, it's what they do, is that before they go to the mikvah and are together with their husband, they make sure that not only do they stop bleeding, but that they have 7 clean days. It's really 5. It's 5 days of the days of bleeding, even if they're not actually bleeding that many days, and then 7 days. So it's quite a few days for just a drop of blood. So there's a lot of questions on this. For example, the biggest question is, I occasionally get asked this question. What if somebody has a short cycle and it's hard for them to conceive? Is there a way to do away with a day or 2 or something like that? And I can't even give the answer, my friends, is so mysterious that when Moshe Feinstein was asked this question, he never put the answer into writing. Okay, so I'm not going to say it here. So that's already one thing to have a conversation about it. Here it says something. Now, why would there be any room for leniency? maybe because it says the word that they were noheg, meaning that was their custom. It didn't say the rabbis made this law. It says they made themselves have this law. But the reality is it's now the law. So the fact that they originally made it their own custom doesn't really change the fact that it's written into the law now. Or is there an element of astringency that they took upon themselves that there could ever be a matter of leniency? That's a question. I'm not here to answer it. I'm just saying right away you could say that's not really a straightforward law. That's a law that there's a lot to discuss about, right? So the idea here is that it's not really that straightforward. And right away, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to have a conversation about. And the second law is no different than that. What's the second law? The second law is very interesting, very problematic for a lot of people because it represents the idea of a ha'arama, a legal fiction. What is the second law? The Gemara says, another thing, Moshiach says, that if a person wants to get away with not giving the tithe called the meiser, what one can do is they can bring in the produce without having taken off the husks or whatever they're called. And by doing that, then they can feed their animals that, because as long as they didn't do that before they brought it in, they're technically not responsible to take the meiser on. They shouldn't give themselves a meal, a kavua meal, like a full regular meal. They might be able to take a bite of it, but they can continuously give it to their animals. So it's like a trick to get out of the thing. So here there's a whole conversation saying like, usually if something is a trick, you don't do it l'chavchila. It's only good b'diavad, which in English means if you did it, it's okay, but we don't advise somebody to do it. And then it brings a whole question about what we do on Pesach and with selling the chametz. Is that okay? And is it a legal fiction? Again, a lot to talk about. And the point is, it's still a halacha psuka. What does that mean? Well, this is the law. I mean, you could discuss it, but there's no need to discuss it. But the reality is you could. So why are these two things brought? So let's take a look again on what these are really about. One is about a woman's status with her husband, in terms of her ability to be with her husband. And the second is about produce and one's ability to access the produce and when one is still obligated to bring the tithing, the meiser, and so on and so forth. So what one can arguably say is that when it comes to davening, there's a couple things that we're looking for. We're looking for the nature of our relationships, helping define the nature of our relationships. And we're looking for defining our relationship with the work of our hands. Because those two things are like two critical things. What's the nature of my relationship? I'm examining it before God. Is this the person that I'm going to be with? Is this like the old Yiddish song about a person is sitting and thinking, "Vemen tu nemen unish bashemen," which woman he's going to take and marry and not embarrass, and then the other one, it's not going to, he's going to say no to one and yes to the other. So these are the type of things that are in real life. Whether it's a young man who's deciding who he's going to date and so on and so forth, these are like real serious questions that enter into what a person is really davening for. Like Rabbi Nachman says, we daven to really find our soulmate. So in a sense, this idea of a woman sitting for the Shiva Nekiyim, the 7 clean days, for the drop the drop of blood, so to speak, represents one's ability to have tahara, to have clarity in the area of relationships. Because the Shiva Nekiyim, the 7, right, they represent the 7 days of the week, which represent the 7 Sfirot Chesed through Malchut, so to speak. These are critical days that one has to evaluate oneself to see one's heart in the relationship. The other one, and if you can get through that test, so to speak, then you'll know who it is who's really for you, who's your soulmate, so to speak. That's one of the halacha psukas. So the second halacha psuka, the second straightforward halacha, is again when it comes to money, because we know that on the one hand we need to make money, but on the other hand, in the very making of the money, we are not able to know right from wrong. Like if you look at the Tiger King, that wonderful, amazing, fun documentary, what you'll see is regular people. I know people think that anyone from Oklahoma can't be regular, but you'll see regular people in the big cat industry, so to speak, who once they get a taste of the money that comes in from selling these cats or the baby tigers, it's almost as if they lose a sense of right or wrong, and then they just go downhill from there until there's no turning back. And so it's really a cautionary tale for every one of us. It's not just about some guy who has a mullet, who lives in Oklahoma, who's married to 2 men, or some guy who calls himself a guru who has 7 wives. And, that's not just about these characters, which definitely is inhabited by amazing characters. But the moral of the story is how easy it is to lose one's way. And in a sense that the Gemara is telling us, your animal can eat. When you take the truma in like that, when you take in your produce like that without having taken off the motes, the chaff, you could eat it. You could feed it to your animal permanently. You don't have to worry about it. But for yourself to have a real meal out of it, so to speak, then you have to take it in the proper way, and then you have to bring meiser before you eat it. So it's teaching us that what your relationship with your work is depending on how you define what it is that you're feeding with it, and that makes all of the difference. So that's just a little hint of something to do with it. But the point is, in all of these things, is it's getting ready to daven, preparing oneself for davening, because preparing oneself, I'm really realizing that everything in this world is all about how we enter into that moment before we go into wherever we're going. So, for example, if you go to a Talmud class and you really want to get the most out of it, I'm going to tell you a little secret. You come with a pad and a paper, and you write down, and maybe you even prepare beforehand. If you don't prepare, be ready to sit and take notes, because you can listen to me or any rabbi for 5 minutes or 5 hours. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. 9 out of 10 Talmud classes, maybe 15 out of 16 Talmud classes that I listen to, I don't come with a pad and paper. I just listen to. But I can tell you, when I come with a pad and paper and I take notes, I get so much more from that Talmud class, because now I was forced to listen better. I was forced to think more, and I was forced to think when I wrote, and then I have notes that I can remember. So it magnifies the experience 4 times. Now, why don't I do it if I know how beneficial it is? Very simple. I'm lazy, right? So, again, it's impossible to always just come in with the right attitude and the right energy and to do everything like that, because we're tired and we don't have all the time in the world to set our minds to doing it right. But when we really want to do something, if something is important to us, we prepare ourselves. So that's the same thing with tefillah, with prayer. And that's what this daf is talking about. This daf is talking about a continuation of what we ended with on daf 31. 32 is dedicated. It's the leiv. It is the heart of brachot. And actually, it's lamed aleph. It's the low. It's the no of brachot. Next one is leiv. Okay, I'm off by 1. Just add 1. There's a shema kolo. 31 plus 1 is 32. Okay, great. So now we go to number 5. Number 4. How do we daven, or how do we prepare to daven? Do we prepare with seriousness, or do we prepare with joy? Okay, so the Gemara says, before we already learned the idea of the Mishnah, one has to come to prayer with seriousness. Now we learned another thing, that you should come to prayer with a halacha psuka, with a straightforward, simple law that there's not much to discuss. But that's more not to be worked up about questions and answers, because that workup will linger into the prayer. Now there's a third thing, but I'm going to leave aside the halacha psuka, so we're going to only focus on two, which are seriousness versus joy. And then we're going to talk about what joy, simcha shel mitzvah, the joy of a mitzvah is. The Gemara says the following. I'm going to let you look inside with me. Number 4. Tana Rabbanan, ein omden lehispel alom b'toch atzvus v'lom b'toch atzlus v'lom b'toch schok. There was a brisa that taught a person does not pray, not out of depression or sadness, not out of laziness, and not out of laughter, and not out of sicha, like a speech, like a just an unimportant talk, small talk. V'lo mitoch kalas rosh, not out of lightheadedness. V'lo mitoch dvarim b'telim, and I don't know the difference between a sicha and dvarim b'telim, but I guess a sicha could just mean I'm having a conversation with, the shopkeeper. It's not frivolous because it's for a purpose, but it's also going to keep ringing in my head. But rather than all of those things, simcha shel mitzvah, rather one should daven out of the joy of a mitzvah. Okay, now what does that mean? Says Rashi. So Rashi says something very interesting. Kigon divrei tanchumin shel Torah, kigon samoch legulas Mitzrayim, comforting words of Torah. For example, how we talk about the redemption of Egypt from Egypt, which is presumably a good thing, like especially if we are having a hard time saying, oh, God took us out of Egypt, probably he'll be able to save us again. Osamoch letila leDavid, or we say Ashrei, that has Tila Ashrei, that we call Ashrei, is really actually starts with Tila David in Psalms. We add in Ashrei in the beginning. Shehu shal shvach v'tanchumen, that's about praising God and comforting us. Kigon ritzon yerev yasa, like it says, the will of those who are in awe of you, you fulfill. And Shomer Hashem l'chol ha'ohav, as kol ha'ohav, God guards all of those who love that love Him. So that's Ashrei. It could go on Bekriyas Hasaduros Betfilas Arvis, like the prayers that are organized in the evening time before it's part of Mariv. Kilo Yitosh Hashem Amo, God won't forsake His people. Kiyotze behen. In other words, one of the things about prayer is that we need to, how do I say this? We need to feel better about ourselves. We need to be happier. So in order for us to be happier, we need to focus on the positivity of what God is capable of doing, what He's done for us, and what He will do for us, what He'll continue to come through for us. This idea will give the prayer a certain rootedness. Because we feel that we are being listened to, we will talk. I'll give you an example. Imagine you're visiting a relative, and every time you talk to the relative, all they do is look at their phone. And worse, when they're finally answering you, they're actually texting someone else at the same time. And you could tell by their answer that they're distracted. You could see they are, and you can feel it and hear it. You came to talk about something serious. Are you really going to feel comfortable? Are you going to just say, I guess this is not the time, not the place, not the person? You're not going to really divulge this private information that's weighing heavily on your heart. The same thing is what tefillah is. if you don't have a sense of connectivity when you come into prayer, if you don't have the simcha, if you're distracted, all of these other things that we talked about are distracted. It's like you were on the phone, you were talking to other people, you were just not serious or too serious, sad about whatever it is. You're not able to, because in tefillah, it's like you and God are a reflection of each other. So the way you approach your opportunity to daven to Him has all to do with where the settledness of your mind is and the hope that you give, the chances that you think you have for the prayer to have some level of success. Now, on the one hand, the idea of success in prayer is very problematic because there's a concept that the rabbis frown on, which is iyun tefillah. Iyun tefillah literally means somebody who is particular about their prayer to the extent where they think that God owes them something, that He must respond to their requests, and if not, they get more depressed and more angry. In other words, it's like in their view, prayer is simply a spiritual ATM where you press the button, you say the words, and then God, if He doesn't give you the things that you're requesting, you call up the customer complaint hotline to say that it's broken. God is broken. God isn't working today. That is not what we're talking about because that's a little bit immature. But on the other hand, you have to feel that you're being listened to. You don't have to. Yeah, there's a difference between somebody hearing you and listening to you and doing everything you ask for. There may be good reasons why they hear you and don't do what you ask for. Perhaps they don't agree with you. Perhaps they're older than you and smarter than you and even know things. So we don't always know how God's, so to speak, answering our prayers will occur. But we have to go in with the right attitude towards our prayers being heard. So that's number 4, which is that the halacha is that we pray not so much, according to Rashi, it seems like the halacha is that we focus on the joy and not on the seriousness. And how do we do that? Because we start with positivity. We start with Psukei de Zimra. We start with Ashrei. We start with psalms that put us in the mood. You have also, like Rabbi Soloveitchik talks about that tefillah needs a matir, that that in order to be able to pray to God, you need to have permission, so to speak. And what you do before the prayer, like Psukei de Zimra, and even to some degree Shema, and you see the whole section on Yetzias Mitzrayim and the Brachos that come after the Shema are all the asking permission before you come to the king. And even the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, the first 3 brachot, are praise before you can ask for what you need. But Tosfos actually, on face value, seems to disagree with my analysis of how Rashi understands the Gemara and says that the halacha is like the Mishnah and the Brisa, and that there's not a contradiction between the very nature of the way I worded it, are you davening from heaviness or joy, is one or the other. That's not how Tosfos learns. Let's take a look at Tosfos. Tosfos says, let me do a little bit more Gemara and then I'll do Tosfos. Actually, I'm going to back it up. It says, Rabbanan avdi kamasnisan, Rav Ashi avid kabraisa. The rabbis did like our Mishnah, that you should daven from Kovid Rosh, from start. You get serious before you davening. And Rav Ashi learns like the Brisa. There's a machlokas rishonim whether the Brisa is halacha psuka, to do a very straightforward halacha, or the Brisa that I just quoted to you 5 minutes ago of Elamatoch Simcha Shal Mitzvah, to begin the davening from Simcha Shal Mitzvah. So here's what Tosfos learns. Tosfos learns, classic Tosfos, Rabbanan Avdi Kavas Nisan v'Kavasau Karmelam. We establish the halacha like the rabbis. L'chein ein mispalim mitoch kalis rosh v'schok elam mitoch kovid rosh v'simcha shal mitzvah. Here's the bottom line: is Tosfos combines the two seemingly contradictory modalities of entering into prayer and says that they're the same thing. Kovod Rosh, seriousness, and Simcha Shal Mitzvah, the joy of a mitzvah. Kigon, she'osuk b'divrei Torah, like studying a halacha, right, the Torah. L'chei nagu lomer psuka, or actually not halacha so much, but divrei Torah. L'chei nagu lomer psuka d'zimra ba'ashrei kodem tefillah. That's why we say psuka d'zimra and ashrei, because that puts us in the mood of Simcha Shal Mitzvah. So, okay, I'm not going to complain about Snagrim. I already did that today, and I love them too. So I can't. So what does this mean? Are we coming into prayer serious or happy, or what does that mean that it's serious yet simcha shal mitzvah? So perhaps you could say that the Tosfos is explaining why Navardak's attitude of no laughing till Moshiach is coming, learning this Gemara a little bit too narrowly, is that when you're doing this Tosfos, along with the Gemara on the end of Lamed Amud Beis, says that the Gemara says that Rab Zera Chazi to have Reb Zera was having too much of a fun. He was laughing too much, being too happy, and Amar Le b'chol atzav ye'amosar. They said when out of a sadness comes gain, meaning don't be so happy. Amar Le anat tefillin menachna. He said I'm wearing tefillin. In other words, when you're doing a mitzvah or you have a mitzvah on you like tefillin, you're not afraid of being happy. So perhaps you could argue and say that example of the I'm wearing tefillin and Tosfos example of Simcha Shal Mitzvah is Kovod Rosh, means the idea of being serious and not too frivolous is that we're afraid that if you're frivolous, you're going to become frivolous about some narishkeit, about something silly. But if you believe with a deep faith that Molech Halar's Kavoda, that God's glory is everywhere, and then you're or in the power of Avos Yisrael, and you're having a farbrengen with friends, or even in the power of love between a husband and wife, then all of a sudden that simplistic view of not laughing and happy, it doesn't mean you got the wrong pshat. You really didn't get pshat in the Gemara. You learned it, but you forgot to learn Tosfos. It's almost like sometimes people say, how could you dance on Shabbos? Because the Gemara says clearly you can't dance or clap on Shabbos. It's very clear. It's a Mishnah even. The thing is, Tosfos says that we see people do it. So again, there's a whole discussion even till today what that means. And there's some people who don't sing and dance. And they sing, they don't dance. With the coronavirus, you shouldn't sing either. But anyway, the point only is that you have to learn deep. You can't just learn a little bit. Because then when you learn a little bit, then you get stuck, and maybe in Navardak, they're big, huge Talmidei Chacham. They know the Tosfos also. It's just that they take it how they take it, and we take it how we take it. So again, I'm telling you these Torahs because everyone needs to have a Rav for different areas. Some people you need a Rav in halacha, other people you need a Rav in relationships. They're not necessarily the same Rav. So that's why I'm sharing this idea with you. Let's go to number 5. Which is how to be remembered. This is a murdika thing. How to be remembered. A lot of people have been dying. So, because so many people have been dying, we should talk about how to be remembered when you die. Okay, so let's look at the Gemara. Rav Huna, the Breder of Yirmiyah, Bar Abba, says, so Tana, a bunch of rabbis. Person shouldn't take leave, say goodbye from a friend, only from a discussion of a halachic thing. Because of that, he'll be remembered. In other words, later on, that person will be quoted as having taught a halacha. Ki had Rav Cana aluya Rav Simi bar Ashi mufumnara ad beit Sanise. There's a story with Rav Cana and Rav Simi. The one was accompanying the other from a place called Pum Nahara till a place in Bavel that had these palm trees. It might have been called Palm Springs of Bavel. Kimata lahasam, when they reached that palm treed area, Amar Leimar, Vadid Amar Inshi Hanitz Nisi Bavel, one of the rabbis said to the other, probably Rav Cana, I think it was, told the other rabbi, Rav Simi, these palm trees of Bavel, Isnuhum Adam Arishon Vadahasha, they've been here from the time of Adam, first Adam, till now. Amalai, Dr. and Milsa, the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, the other rabbi, Rabbi Simbrashi, said, you reminded me of another teaching. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, what is the meaning of the verse that says, in the land that nobody has worked in and the man has not sat there? If nobody worked there, how would they settle in a place like that? It comes to teach us that any land that was settled by Adam is still settled today, and any land that was not settled by Adam, the commentaries say not literally settled, but like intended, that Adam intended it for to be settled. Okay, this Gemara, on a simple level, is really difficult to understand. Really, Adam planted the trees in Babel, in Babylonia, and any place that he either is settled or wanted to be settled is settled, and what does that mean? So perhaps it means the following thing. How do we attain foreverness? Okay, people get married, they have children, and they think biologically that that's a big achievement. It is. They have continuity through that, and that's wonderful. But if biology alone defines your achievement, biology is just existence. It doesn't. So the question is, did Adam think of you? And that's the question, really. Let me give you another example. You find that there are certain people that they went on these different, like Columbus, right? When he set out to America, he had two missions. One was to get to America, and the second was to get enough money to go to Jerusalem and, do whatever he wanted to do in Jerusalem. He had some messianic, probably Christian, converso, whatever version of whatever it is he wanted out of Jerusalem. The point is, and there are people who, again, it's not a serious theory, but there were rabbis and other people, thinkers, not historians per se, who thought that the Indians were 10 tribes. Well, what's the connection between the United States of America, forget the United States of America, just the Americas, which, when they were barely, made contact with by the Europeans, they were just the natives here, the Indians who weren't even Indians, so to speak, who just lived there. At that time, for people to be thinking about ideas like the lost tribes or going to Jerusalem, coming here so they can get to Jerusalem, it doesn't make any sense. Actually, it does. Because if you think about it, what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect why we explore with where we come from and what our destiny in the past has set us out to become, and connect it to our roots, so to speak. And that's what halacha in a way is. When we mention a halacha that we've then when I learn halacha, when I learn true halacha from my teachers, and it inspires me, I feel connected to Sinai. I feel connected to Adam even. I feel connected all the way back. So when you are part of the chain of the transmission of Torah and you allow for something that could have been forgotten or never understood in the first place to be elucidated and heard, you're then part of the reason that there's a continuity, so to speak. You're part of that chain that the Torah is remembered by. And that's what it means that Adam settled, meaning that Adam represents eternity. Adam is a Jungian concept here. He's a physical being, but he's more of a Jungian archetypal first man, so to speak. Where were we in the image, in the mind, in the plan of the first man? What is your impact in the world going to leave after 120? And that's the Dvar halacha, so to speak. And again, how is that connected to this page of Talmud? Where's the Ruach HaKodesh in that? Where's the divine inspiration in that? And the answer is very clear. The answer is, what's the purpose of davening? What is the purpose of coming to davening with simcha, with joy? What's the purpose of davening coming with a halacha, psuka? It's not just a convergence of the mention of halacha, and here we're going to mention also, just like you should do halacha, a little straight up halacha before davening and say something to your friend. No, it's so much more. What makes you the type of person that's going to be remembered? What type of tefillah? That comes from a halacha psuka. That comes from the halacha that you impart, that Adam saw you with, so to speak, to settle your settlement in life through the application of that mention of that law that you now will be remembered by, so to speak, through memory of who we envision continuing what we're going to do. Right? This is Gemara. This is the prophecy in Gemara. It's beautiful. Okay, so that's how we're remembered. So if you want to be remembered, the simple thing is, if you want to be remembered, make a spiritual contribution into the world and pray in a way that helps you be a slightly better person. That comes out of the halacha psuka. The straightforwardness, so to speak, of the halacha psuka represents something that's transmittable to other people. Right? This is a very deep thing here. In other words, when you have a child, what do you want from that child? There's some idea that you want to go along with that biological child, that you feel you impart with them, a value system that you impart with them that creates a continuity between you and them, and a link in the chain that ostensibly was the began with Adam, so to speak. And that's eternity. Okay, let's go to number 6. The roadmap to prayer through the example of Cana. Okay, let's take a look at the Gemara inside. I got to move it a little quickly because I'm getting too involved and taking too long. Number 6 is a bunch of things about davening. I'll start with the bottom. Amar Rav Hamnuna, Kama Hilchos Givrav Sa Ika Lemishma Mahani Krai Techana. How many wonderful and amazing laws can we learn out? Important laws can we learn out of the verses in the book of Samuel, first chapter, that we talk about Chana in her quest for having a child, in her journey to the Mishkan and her prayers there. It says, V'chana hi medaberes al liba. Chana was praying from her heart. From here we learn the important idea that a person who's praying has to focus their heart, their intention. Only her lips were moving. Here we hear that a person praying shouldn't just pray in their heart, but they should enunciate the words with their lips. However, V'kol lo yishma, the verse continues, it says, Eli cannot, the Kohen Gadol could not hear her voice. From here we learn that when it's davening Shemona Esrei, one should not raise one's voice. The verse says that Eli thought she was a drunkard. And we learn from there, that when one is drunk, you cannot pray. Then it says, when are you going to carry on in your drunkenness, etc. Here we learn that if we see in your friend something that's improper, you have to rebuke them. Okay. Then Chana responds and says, I'm not drunk, I'm just bitter, and I'm praying for children. That'll be numbers. We'll do that in number 7 a little bit. But the prayer of Chana contains the following elements. It contains the idea that here's a woman who's bitter. Right? The verse says that she responds to Eli and says, I'm a heartbroken and embittered woman, and you're mistaking me for a bas plial, for like a bad and evil person, and I'm bitter because I'm praying to have a child. And what we learn from here is that it is okay to pray for yourself. And the fear of praying for oneself is that it becomes selfish. And it often does. People who pray for themselves often are just praying for whatever they need. They're not really praying for what's right, not for them even, just for what they want at that moment. So it's almost like an immature form of prayer. The question becomes, when is there something that you really need that is a valid form of prayer? And Chana fits that criteria because she prays from a certain depth of her being, a certain brokenness that's really a valid brokenness. Of that she and the Gemara is going to go on to describe elements of her prayer. In fact, I remember a teaching from the Lubavitcher Rebbe where the Rebbe says that the prayer of Chana gets us to a certain level where what you're asking for and what God wants are the same. It's like, what does that mean? Meaning, on a lower level, it's you. There's you, and there's what God's will is. They're two different things. Like God's will is that I should keep all the laws of the Torah. My will is that I want to take it easy, and I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to have to worry about all of God's laws. You know, I'll worry about a few, and then I won't worry about the rest. That's the kind of ending of where me and God are like, we see together, we're together on certain things. And so that's the reg. And then prayer, when I'm coming from that place of the dichotomy, so then I'm always thinking, this is what I want. I don't know if God wants this. I don't know if I should pray at all about this thing. But what Chana reached is the level where what she was praying for, even though on a surface level it was about what she wanted, and what God actually wanted from her were one and the same. Now, how do you reach that level? That's the level of a mystic, where the person's kind of what the person's goal in life is what God's goal in life is. But again, it's easy to fool yourself, and a lot of people think that about themselves. It's just not true. But that's the level that Chana is talking about. Okay, so we learn a lot from Chana. There's a lot of depth there. But let's go on to number 7 because the hour is late. Other common sense things we learned from Chana. I'll just tell you a couple of things here very quickly, is that Chana rebuked Samuel and she said, I'll read it inside. So he says, Lo adonata b'nefesh lo ruach hakodesh alecha. In this matter, you're not my master, because she used the word lo, no, my master. But at the simple level, she's saying, no, my master, you're incorrect. But on the midrashic level, the agadic level, the Gemara is saying she was responding, you're not my master, and you don't have prophecy, shata chashdani b'davar, because you suspected me of being a drunkard. Now, or shadanti l'kav chova v'lo didanti l'kav schos. So you didn't give me the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I'm praying. You just thought right away I'm just a drunk. Lo yadas the Ishak Shas Ruach Hanacha V'Yam Shechalo Shesisi. Amar Belazar Mikal Nachshav B'Davar She'ein Bo Shetzarach Lahodio. We learn out from there that if you if somebody suspects you of something that you're not guilty of, you have to let them know that you're not guilty of that thing. Okay. Okay, there's more. There's a lot more here, but I'm going to go to number 8. Prayer to overturn nature or to get nature to do its job. What am I talking about here? Number 8. Let's look at number 8. The Gemara says there was nobody that called God Tzvaot, the Lord of hosts. Now, Tzvaot, like hosts, could be in the army, but they could also be like the hosts of heaven, like the stars in the sky, right? So she says, Chana says before God, Master of the world, from all of the hosts of heaven, is it so hard for you to give me a son? What's an example of this? Like a king that had a royal feast, and all of the servants were invited, and a poor person came and stood by the door, and he said, give me some food. And nobody paid any attention to him. I guess he wasn't on the guest list. Then he just pushed his way in, and he went straight to the king, and he says, King, you prepared this banquet for everyone, meaning there was probably like 50,000 people there, right? Anyone in the government. Is it that hard for you to find like a setting for me? And the king obviously gave it to him. And the Gemara later also says, I'm going to skip a little bit here out of order to get to my point. About matters of her heart. She said before God, anything you created in a woman, you didn't create anything for naught. Eyes to see, ears to hear, nostrils to smell, mouth to speak. Yadayim lasas behem halacha, hands to work with, or glayim lahalach, feet to walk with. Dadim lahanik behen, breasts to nurse with. Dadim alalu shenasata alibi, these breasts that you put on my heart. So here the matter of the heart is reinterpreted to mean regarding her breasts. Lama lo lahanik behen, why? I don't nurse with them. Tenli ben, give me a son, va'anik behen, and I will be able to nurse with them. What we see here is this idea that she's saying the nature is that I should be a mother. The nature of how you built me leads me to wanting to be a mother, and therefore my prayer should be that nature should take its course and it should come to fruition that I become a mother, and I use those parts of my body. Just like the nature of the world is that you provide for everything. You know, you made all of this world to work, so why can't it work for me? On the other hand, there's another element here. The Gemara says as follows. It seems to another modality of breaking nature to get to what you want. What is that? So it says, Imra tira. If you see, it's a double expression that seems unnecessary. So there's one way of learning it is that it means something entirely different than the pshat. Amar Balazar, Amar Chana l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chana said to God, Rebbeinu Shel Olam, God, if you see to it, good. Meaning if I have a child, good. But if not, tira elecha v'stata. I'm going to see about you. I'm going to conceal myself with a man in front of Elkanah, meaning I'll make Elkanah jealous. He'll warn me not to be with that particular man. I'll become a sota. And then what they'll do is they'll give me the water of the sota. And you can't make your Torah into plaster, because the Torah says if the woman is innocent, the nux of an SSR, she'll conceive with her husband. So the Gemara has a little discussion about that. But here's very interesting. What's one of the maybe only mitzvahs in the Torah that really takes in magic or a miracle, that relies on a miracle, is the sota water. And she's saying, I'm going to use the sota water to conceive and have a child. All the commentaries say, how could a righteous woman like Chana threaten such a threat? She can't. And they're saying, well, she doesn't really mean it. She's just saying it, but she wouldn't do it. But she's saying, since I could do it, God you should treat me as if I did without doing it and give me a child. Okay, very nice. But what it's also saying is that part of prayer, of Chana's prayer, is saying you put a miracle into halacha, into the actual law of the sota water, and you didn't just make it for bad. You didn't just make that the sota water will kill the woman who did in fact have this adulterous affair. You also made it for good, that if she's innocent, if she couldn't have a child, she'll have a child. So we see, God, that there's a part of the Torah that's miraculous, and you put it into a law. So if you're putting it into a law, so then I could put it into my demand, so to speak, for davening. Again, there's a tension, even till today, you'll see it a lot in the world, like with religious Jews, who have simplistic views of prayer and sophisticated views of prayer, even sometimes in the same person. Like the person on the one hand understands prayer is about a spiritual relationship with God. Other times they'll just be like, God, just do this thing for me already. Like Tevya, you know. So here the question is, am I fulfilling my nature by being a mother? And you, God, are just the one getting in the way somehow of not letting nature really reveal itself, and that's one way of looking at it. Or, God, you promised a miracle in the Torah for the sota. If she's in fact innocent, can't you do a miracle for me? So those are both part of prayer. Perhaps you can learn that there's a thing that the Gemara constantly says, it's better if you get what you get from natural means without having to resort on a miracle, because the Gemara says sometimes if you resort for a miracle, it's like disgusting, because God couldn't provide for you in a natural way. So other times it says it's wonderful, and they're both true, meaning God gave God gave compassion to the whole world in the way the world interacts with one another, so that we could do business with one another and make a living and create medicine and healing and so on and so forth. But sometimes a person needs a miracle that goes beyond that. And both of those the Gemara is exploring two different ways to understand Tfilas Chana. That's number 8, prayer to overturn nature or to get nature to do its job. And the answer is either or, one or the other, sometimes both. And they're both in the Torah. Again, if you're a Maimonidean scholar, you're going to find in Maimonides that prayer is very much about nature being done in the correct way. If you're some other type of scholar, you're going to like the miracle. You know, like me, you like them both. So, number 9, what do you want for your child? This is great stuff. What do you want for your child? So, Samuel prays, and if you're interested, there's like 5 different opinions about what she's asking. Chana prays, and Samuel prays for a son, which is going to be Samuel. And different rabbis interpreted Zera Anashim, a man amongst men. So, for example, it could mean that he's so great he's like Moses and Aaron, like Moshe v'Aaron b'Chona v'Shmuel b'Korah Shmo, like he's mentioned together with Moses and Aaron. Or he anoints 2 kings, or he's above average, he's a leader, and like everyone looks up to him. But I want to share something else with you. That's very fascinating here. The Gemara says as follows. So, let me show it to you inside. Number 9. The rabbis say, what do I want for my child? I want a child that doesn't stick out. He looks like everyone else. Kiyasir Abdimi Amar, Abdimi said, similar to that, Lo arach v'lo gutz, v'lo katan v'lo ilim. I don't want too tall or too stout, or too short, v'lo tzachar, v'lo gichar, v'lo chacham, v'lo tipesh. I don't know how to translate all of those things. Let me look at the... Not too white, not too red, these are easy ones, not too wise and not too dumb. So here's a very obvious question. Okay, you don't want your child to be too tall. I don't know why. Okay. Too white. Okay, whatever. You're not into that whiteness thing, But it's too smart. What is that? You don't want the so So the truth is that there is such a thing as too smart for their own good. Ibr Chacham, somebody who's always trying to outsmart. Like sometimes you find people that they're always outsmarting everyone else, and you know already that they're like outsmarting everyone, and maybe they're a little dishonest or deceptive, and you're like, enough. Like it's just so annoying dealing with that person because it's just like always doing some shtick. But what about somebody who's a genius and learning a black Gemara? Shmuel was exceptional. So, and the rabbis disagree with her and saying that the rabbis say ordinary, the other rabbis say extraordinary. So now it could be there just to have different opinions. Now I'd like to suggest the following. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim explains that there are certain things in ideas, what he calls the Maaseh Merkava and Maaseh Bereshis, a mystical, metaphysical, philosophical understanding of the world. You could call it a certain type of sciences and parts of religion that are connected to those things in terms of physics and creation and so on, that if you learn them in the wrong time, you're going to go, he doesn't say off the derech, but that's basically what's going to happen. It's still like that today, right? Almost everything I know in science can be reconciled with Torah, but only if you have a mature understanding of Torah and of science. If you take a little kid who doesn't have a mature understanding of either of those things, maybe again, the Rambam meant what he meant in his day. There's other things that are different, but the idea still stands. So you can be very wise, but not necessarily in a way that people will be like, oh, what a smart guy, but they're like, too bad he never had any friends because he's just too smart for us. Like, there is a thing about socializing and being part of a community and being part of the people that you can go on to brilliance, but not if you start off from the beginning as separated from the normal person. You can rise from it, but not in opposition to the group, so to speak. And that's something I think we want from our children. We don't want our children to be so unique that they can't make friends and live in a community and can't meet a spouse and so on and so forth. On the other hand, do we want them just to be average? Of course not. We want them to be so much more than average. So I think that's a little bit about what we want for our children, and that's the blessing that we're talking about here, that Chana was looking for from Eli for Shmuel. Number 10, are problems that we create really God's fault? And the answer is sometimes they are. And we're going to do more of that that's like my favorite. The reason why I'm not talking about it now is because I spent way too much time with the other 9. And I will continue with number 10, will become part of number 1 in 30 top 10 teachings of 32, Lev of the Talmud. And that's a big part of Ishbitz. Ba'ata hasivos, the Gemara. Let me just show it to you for a minute. The Gemara says, V'amar Rabbi Elazar, Eliyahu hitiach dvarim klape ma'ala. Rabbi Elazar says that Elijah the prophet, he spoke with a little chutzpah towards God. Shenemar va'ata hasibos es libam acharanis. When after the short-lived victory over the prophets of the Baal, it wasn't long before things went badly again for Elijah. And what Elijah said to God is, you, God, caused their hearts to go away from you. So the Gemara is saying that the whole idea of free choice, Bechir Chavshis, is being undermined by Elijah. And the Gemara on 32 we'll say it's true. There are times that we don't have to take full responsibility for our actions. We could blame God a little bit. That's very theologically problematic, because once we start doing that, why do we have reward and punishment if we're not really responsible for our actions? And the answer is going to be that we're going to learn about that, God willing, next week. Thank you.